All right, everyone. I want to welcome you to this new episode of the Sister Science podcast. Today, I'm sitting here with Wendi Napier of Open Door Designs. And full disclosure, Wendi and I have been in each other's circles since 2017 and gravitated towards all the same things in terms of personal growth and growing our Dharma, I think, the life purpose piece through our businesses. And Wendi's been a part of my little Year of You community since 2019, we think. So a long time. Today, we want to talk to you about neurodivergence and how people see patterns and self acceptance. We'd like to have a conversation around how, when you own your uniqueness in how you see the world and how you need to interpret the world, the filters that you use, when you own that uniqueness, that's when you sort of sparkle and shine. And that self understanding is really important. So, Wendi, let's see where this goes. Welcome. And I guess I'm going to start you off by just saying, can you help us unpack that word neurodivergence?
Absolutely. Um,
Yay.
and I say that with caution too, because it's something that's pretty, it feels it feels tender and new to me. And although now the deeper the understanding I have and how that shows up in my world and my life and my family, um, the the more understanding I have of like my entire history and my upbringing and stuff. So I think we really came to I say we because this is a family affair. I mean, neurodivergence isn't just a you and you alone. There is a lot of qualifying evidence that if one of your parents is neurodivergent or both of them, you most definitely will be. So um, I think breaking apart my resistance to labeling
Okay.
was kind of the first step in understanding I I label myself with everything. Like I think we all do. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a designer, I'm a dog lover. And if I wasn't a dog lover, then I wouldn't identify with, the dog park and find myself there with people who I see myself in. We speak to the dog before we speak to the person, or we
Yeah.
show our emotions like outwardly um excited for small things, like to see yourself and to label yourself, I don't necessarily feel is this like demoralizing thing anymore. It's just like self-identity around where you fit, and that, yeah,
And yet there's some labels, like you said, wife, mother, dog lover, like you're happy to sort of put that sticker on yourself. And then, but you said you had some resistance to the idea of like neurodivergent.
right, yeah. And I think it's because in my upbringing, or wherever I learned that neurodivergence was like maybe a 5 or 10% or so, you were like the oddball.
Right.
It's not like the idea of neurodivergence is it's anything that's different than the norm is literally, it only has to be 49%. And that
Yeah.
is what is identified. So when we're talking about people on the spectrum, it's a spectrum.
Yeah.
Like we see spectrum like we see light. There's a visibility from, red to violet. And we're talking about even our chakras, right? There's a visibility in that spectrum. And then once we get beyond that, it's not visible, but it's magical. And that's what I sort of see spectrum as. We're
Yeah.
all on the spectrum. We're all within the spectrum. But
And
it's
the kids these days feel like they talk like that. They're like, oh, everyone's
everyone.
on the spectrum, mom. Like, don't worry about it. But there's something generational about it, isn't there? Like it's almost like the kids have this better understanding of spectrum, and we're sort of like, this is normal, and that's not.
Yeah. Yeah, and that idea that there's an us and them. There's a,
Yeah.
why can't you just be normal? Well,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, why would you want to be?
Well, and we live in a world that very much wants to like define normal and also other, like this idea of, that person is other than me, that idea is other than mine. Those ideas are not accepted. Like we do live in a world where division is in the goal of
Yeah,
power.
it
Yeah,
feels
so keeping us thinking this in traditional ways is helpful to people in power.
to people in power, but also there's a level of like safety
Okay.
I think a delusion that it's safe
Okay.
where you're like if they're different than me, then I don't associate with that because I don't quite understand it. But now that when like if we open up to this understanding that um diversity is actually expansive and it's not limiting, but it's heart opening
Yeah. So
because
maybe it's more than that. Maybe it is more that we've been taught that difference is unsafe.
we want to understand our world, right? We naturally want to know that 1 + 1 = 2, but that's so limiting,
Okay.
right?
So
Like,
when we can make sense of something, when we can see ourselves in someone else, when we can say they're the same as me, it gives us a sense of security.
and comfort, right? Why
Okay.
I hang out at the dog park.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. But
Okay.
but I need to put myself in places of di diversity where then I'm in this place of questioning, why is that different? How are they relating to me in a different way that I'm used to? And can I give them the heartfelt acknowledgement that they're coming from a place of genuine, curiosity like I am? Um, and it just breaks this mold of different is something to avoid or or there's more to it than that. It's recognizing that yeah, the spectrum gives us space for us and beyond. And that's sort of what I meant by like with the light spectrum. All of those abilities that you cannot see
Yeah.
fall outside of the visual realm. And that's what I feel like neurodivergent people excel at because
The
they have a way
you
of
cannot
seeing
see.
things that maybe it isn't quantifiable on the visual spectrum. So that's where the gifts lie.
Yeah. The way you're now referring to light, I can't help but coming back to the word namaste and how it sort of asks us to be in front of the person and shed all the layers that are outside of their light and
Mhm,
to let yourself see their light. So
mhm.
almost shed all of the idiosyncrasies, shed all the personality traits, shed all of the ways that they're showing up in the world that you may understand or not understand, but allow yourself to know that you have all those things too. See past that in them, see their light, and in doing so, also acknowledge your own. It's like that's the meaning behind that word namaste. So it's almost like namaste recognized neurodivergence millions of years ago,
Absolutely. Yeah.
thousands maybe.
Well, it's that soul to soul connection. And sometimes I think I said this in our earlier conversation is, we're living in a material world.
Yeah,
So that is limiting us in our soulful connection to others and when I say others, I mean everything. So not just the human form, but the trees and the rocks and the sky and the message that comes over the radio. Like it empowers you to connect in different ways that aren't seen but felt and for sensitives, and that's something that I labeled myself earlier on or was labeled as is, oh, Wendy, you're super sensitive. And it was said or delivered to me in a way to say you should probably like take note of that and change, or it like it's a negative thing. But what I wasn't recognizing is that my sensitivity was an absolute gift to me,
Yeah.
because then I wasn't necessarily so focused on those material aspects of the world that maybe were telling me a different story that what was actually being said and shown. And my sensitivity gave me the information that I needed to come to the truths a little bit clearer. But those truths sometimes you have to own. You
Yeah.
have to be comfortable to say, that's not how I'm seeing this or feeling this way or engaging in the space. So it's a little bit confusing if you don't have that community around you to say, like, it's okay to feel really sensitive about this, or be overwhelmed. Like the sensory pro and it's a lot of things in is related to sensory processing. That's why I love your um the one chapter in the Year of You
Take
relating
care
to
of your senses.
taking
Yeah.
care of your senses. Like
Yeah.
it hit me in a way where I was like, absolutely, we have to care for these senses, because that is sort of what feels overwhelming when when y- you're thrown into a world where somebody's senses have been dulled down, and
Yeah.
you're like hyper attuned to all of these things, and you're thinking, like, how is not everybody not feeling the same way at all as I do?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We did see a little bit of that sort of repatterning as we all went through COVID, as our sensory experience sort of like totally changed when the world shut down, and then we saw our own reintroduction into a busy world, and we watched our sensory reaction to it in real
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Hey, can I go back one step?
please.
Um, we have an idea in our group about what a dynamic group is. And I remember being on retreat once with Kate Stillman, and she was getting us to write down what the traits are of a static group, like, or an undynamic group. And it ended up being like all of our relationships, our job. We have a job description, and it's in everyone expects you to stay in that box of the job description. They don't like you to grow. They don't like you to behave out differently than what's on that piece of paper. And it's almost like every role, like especially the ones that you said were easy to put on yourself, wife, mother, dog lover, has this sort of expected social agreement around it. And the world is interested in you behaving in the ways that it wants you to behave. It's not interested in watching you experiment, grow, become someone different, show up and behave differently than I expected you to because that feels uncomfortable. So, this is about creating a world where we are in dynamic relationship with each other rather than just static. I'm going to ask you how you are. You're going to
Mhm.
say good. Don't tell me anything other than good because that's how this conversation is supposed to go.
Yeah, yeah. And in truth, we've changed. Yeah, and you know that to be true too, in talking about your daughters and how they relate to the world differently. Like, we have leveled up so much, and I feel like we're in this massive momentum right now where it is no long it's not it's it is dynamic. But
Yeah.
those people that are resisting how dynamic the world actually is, those are the people that are really hurting right now, because it's hard to resist a flood. You know,
Yeah.
it's hard to resist change when change is natural. It's
Yeah.
meant to
And
happen.
also, it's hard to keep yourself contracted in your own box when
Yeah.
you have a soul that wants to expand into whatever your particular gift or neurodiversity is.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that the contraction is it like it is trying to keep you safe, but it's pretty energy expensive.
It's energy expensive, absolutely. And then you don't have what you need in order to do the things that you love, because it's so expensive and taxing to hide and prevent, right? Like, we're naturally the evolution of consciousness in all forms is expanding. We're getting a little bit more um, um, less dense,
Less
right?
dense. Yeah.
So
Wow.
the density is dropping, the lightness is coming through, and there's filtration that's happening there. And we either have to move with it and acknowledge that, we actually don't have a choice. This is what's happening.
This
Or
is what's
with
happening.
it. And like
Yeah.
you, a lot of energy expense is what you're
Yeah.
saying.
And it's funny what like as I'm just like in my head is like spinning right now thinking of all this. Like, yes, when we resist this expansion and we try and keep labels very specific
Yeah.
and unchanging, like, no, we're not going to allow any sort of um, differentiation in terms of our labeling. Yeah, it starts to close us down when we insist the world stay black and white for us.
And like I I do want to touch upon labels again though, because I think labels are okay as an identifier, because using your favorite term of of um uh what's your favorite saying, Jill?
Like,
It's it's um
see, I don't know. What's my favorite saying?
it's like it's like awareness is the biggest
Greatest.
agent of change.
Awareness is the greatest agent. That's my favorite saying. You're right.
That is your favorite saying. And
Yeah.
I love it too, because the awareness of who am I helps me to either redefine that, expand that label to something more, or dismiss it to say, you know what, I am no longer a young woman. I'm a middle-aged woman,
Yeah.
or whatever that looks like. I need to know what it is before I'm able to like put it through my filtration and be like, I want more of that or less of that. Or I want to identify myself as a spirit seeker. So other spirit seekers are then in my orbit.
Yeah.
And there's something to there's like I read something the other day, or I heard it or whatever, and it was like pick something in your room right now. Something that you see.
My magic mist from my friend Wendy.
That is the magic mist. So what was that before it was magic mist?
Water, clary sage, and an amethyst stone.
Correct. And also correct, it was an idea,
Yes.
right? It had to be that idea that didn't have a lot of weight, but as the idea is spoken and it takes on, vibrational energy of the spoken word, it manifests, it gathers weight, and then that idea comes into physical form. So
Right.
that's that idea of manifestation. So if I don't speak out loud and say, hey, I'm a neurodivergent individual, nature lover, spirit seeker, middle-aged woman, full of love and compassion
Yeah.
and whatever that is, I can't create that, like I can't magnify that around me until it gains in its frequency and its weight, and it goes from an idea into that physical bottle that's sitting on your desk. So I think that there is an importance to speak out loud what it is that you identify with.
So, on that note, then, the other important thing is the refinement and the discernment of your labels. Like I always say, when I moved away from my parents' house, I left with this basket of like labels that my parents wanted me to take, you know? And my first job as an adult living on my own was to sort of sort through the basket and go, oh my gosh, that was such a beautiful gift that I got from my family, keeping it. And then pulling out another one and being like, not actually sure that I'm going to be the girl that goes to the church every Sunday. This one comes up and it's like, this, like it's like my family taught me this, or my family told me that this was a good thing. And I sorted it. But I do think that it's important to go back, pick it up, and say, oh, this one served me really well as I went through that certain period of life.
Yeah.
But like you said about, I used to be this young woman and now I'm a middle-aged woman. Like, it's like I don't need to carry this one around anymore because
Mhm.
I don't know, it's somehow blocking my way, or it's the
Yeah.
filter isn't necessary anymore, or
Or
it's,
there's a lot of ties to that truth, right? Like when I say young woman, I think of young woman in a sense of like she's still getting to know herself. I mean, I'm going to
yeah.
be further learning about who this Wendy is, but that idea of like the young, the youthfulness, there's like a light innocence of wonder to it where it doesn't have the same grit and vitality of like, I've been around, let me tell you, right? So
Yeah.
there's connections to some of those labels that are limiting, but like you say, I think if we acknowledge and give it like thanks and gratitude for that label when it was pertinent or supportive in our life, then all the better. Yeah. But this new neurodivergence label for me has blown my brain open.
Okay, talk about it.
Well, I think a lot of things come up. I'm speaking from a parent because I feel like my kids have been like the greatest lesson of my entire life. And I think a lot of parents, and I'm not discounting those people that have, don't have parents because we have these relationships in our life that are mirrors of what's going on with us. But I
Yeah.
think, with my kids aging up, becoming teenagers and me trying to like lean in a little bit harder to them, I'm having to really um, recognize the patterns. Like, why did that push my button,
Mm.
or what happened there? So it's given me so much information to really distill where the parallels are, and and I mean, they're byproducts of us, right? So I'm invested in understanding them, which in turn has given me investment, sadly, into understanding myself. And
So
yeah,
I'm just thinking like this label now is a filter. And what it's doing is that there's some sort of stimulus that happens in your house, and then you have an auto response. And now instead of the auto response happening, you slide that filter in and you're like, oh, oh,
yeah,
oh. And then
understand.
that space, that new awareness is created. And then you have this opportunity to respond differently.
Yes, absolutely. Because with greater awareness comes greater compassion and acceptance and love. And like the buttons that are being pressed, they fall away. And it goes in both directions, right? It goes towards my children, but then, like I say, understanding um, neuroplasticity in the brain and all of that. There's so much love and compassion going towards my parents and my
Mhm.
siblings and all of those other people that struggle in different ways or respond to life in different ways that I just didn't quite have an understanding of. And
Right. They didn't do it your way, so you didn't understand it.
right, because
Yeah.
spectrum is a spectrum. I think about your habit
Oh,
tracker, Jill.
yeah,
You
yeah.
put the target in the middle and you say,
Yeah.
okay, in this little pie, where do you find yourself? And in this little pie, where do you find yourself? And yes, pull it out. You end up kind of like this wave pattern in around this bullseye target.
Yeah,
So
this is a slightly different one, but same thing. Yeah.
it's a little bit different. Yeah. Well, we've had a couple of versions over the years.
Yeah, we have. Oh,
Um,
this is one you're talking about.
that's the one I'm talking about, the habit
Oh,
tracker. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Okay.
that is in my point of reference similar to neurodivergency, because we want to think about it in putting it into that masculine feminine terms. We want to think of it as linear. The further that you are along the spectrum, the weirder you are, or the
Right.
odder you are. And I want to just delete that right now because that's not true. But it's this circular thing, so I can be exceptional in um one aspect, but then
Yes.
put me into the little time chart and
Yeah.
I'm wildly confused. I'm
Yeah.
wildly confused, or put you in sensory processing and I'm completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So there's different strengths and weaknesses all within that spectrum that radiates out. It's not a linear thing.
No, it is not.
So that's
I
why
like
it's
that. I like thinking of it as, yeah, not sort of like one end and the other.
no, but
Yeah.
that's a very simplistic way and an easy way
Yeah.
to say, I'm like way at this end and you're way at that end. I'm sorry about that.
And again, used successfully in our world to keep us divided.
Yes, in truth, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. My next question for you then is, okay, tell me how you see patterns. Tell me how your particular unique way of seeing the world when you're honoring it is your gift, is your superpower. What patterns? How do you see patterns?
Everything's layered, but everything is also connected.
Mhm.
So this idea that well, I don't want to put you on the spot to remember a term that I can't remember, but like people that associate like color with numbers or color with flavors or I don't like we have and they think that it's like cross wiring and there's something really messed up in their brain or whatever. But if we reduce that material world, that
Yeah.
those identifiers of numbers, colors, shapes, patterns, materials, if we take those out of the picture, what are we left with? Those are those energetic frequencies or those intangibles that have relationship to one another. And that's how I have always seen the world.
So, are you talking about like clairvoyance, clairaudience, like the way people's like sort of like everyone has a special sixth sense?
Yeah, we could be talking about that too. It's just a form of language. So
Yeah.
so this idea that, you know, are you the water droplet? Are you the ocean?
Mm.
Well, you're both, right? But everything's borrowed.
So, in a
Everything
way, are you also
collected.
talking
So,
like sorry, you go.
well, I was trying to put s- I was trying to reference your clairvoyance, clairaudience or whatever. It's language.
Yeah.
So just like the spectrum, we're gonna have a stronger connection to our voice than our sensory, our body.
Yeah.
So like with healing touch, that's another aspect of things
Another
that
aspect of your offerings.
yeah, that I love. Some people will have intuitive senses and hear things when I feel it in my body. If you got like an achy knee, I got all of a sudden an achy knee. And then I can say, okay, my soul self recognizes your soul self in this area that feels a little bit denser than other areas in this physical body. So again, it's just a form of language and tapping into what your language is. And it's not a one or the other either.
Yeah. And also allowing ourselves to develop our vocabulary because new language helps us label things that previously we hadn't been able to label. So it gives like language is a meaning maker. And as we can apply language to things that previously we have been unable to articulate, all of
Mhm.
a sudden we can bring what's unconscious kind of up a little bit into consciousness. But it's part of the why like everyone in these more feminine modalities have a tough time using language because so much of the magic lies beyond vocabulary.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's almost like language is a tool, like the actual, let's say English language, it's a tool for self-expression. And and we need that in order to can I just reference Atlas of the Heart?
Yeah.
Because that book was pivotal. That was part of one of our 1 year studies. It was
Yeah.
pivotal because I felt like as I was able to expand my language specifically related to emotion that is, you know, on the hierarchy of scales of like vibrational energy, um, it changed my world. So I didn't have to say, you know, I'm sad.
Yeah.
No, I'm experiencing foreboding joy. And then someone can say, well, what is foreboding joy? If they're brave enough to like
Yeah.
dig a little bit deeper. And when I explain it, all of a sudden their idea of what sad is has changed. And now we're connecting on a different level and a different depth in how we express ourselves. So that in turn, language is important, but it's also quite limiting because you think you know what somebody is feeling because all you know is sad.
Mhm.
So you put yourself in the place of sad, but they're feeling something way beyond that. So if we take that same idea and concept over into like the energetic realm, if somebody has a has a my 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 identifier with my intuition came with animals. So every time I passed an animal on a highway, I would um I would get a shudder. And I mean, it's logical. People walk over graves all the time, but then I'd start feeling like my throat constricted. Oh, their neck is broken, their back is broken. But it took me, I had to visually see, what am I responding to? Oh my gosh, there's a dead animal coming up or whatever, for me to make that pattern connection to how it shows up in my body. And then the next step was like, it's not just a shiver, it's the shiver and then some. It's sad and then some. And as you hone in on that feeling or that language and how the world around you is talking, it grows. So
Yeah.
your gateway might be, I'm hearing voices. I say dead people. No, just joking.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But true, truly, it could be.
once you say to the universe, okay, I think I'm picking up with what you're trying to say to me here, then it starts to expand and it starts to expand in all aspects and in sensory.
I think you've just hit it right there, is that this neurodivergence is a gift and it is the way you and universe communicate.
Yeah.
And when you learn how to tap in and be connected to this unique gift, this neurodivergence, this way that you are unique,
Mhm.
then you and universe start having conversations and universe is like, "Oh my God, you finally turned the radio to the right dial." And you're like, "Ah." And
Yeah,
then you and universe start to be able to hone the conversation so that universe is like, "Hey, can you just do that?" Da, 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 da. And you're like, "Oh, yeah, okay." Instead of being like, "I have no idea what just happened to me."
it's it's like what I would imagine a baby feels like when they cry a certain way in a
Yeah.
certain tone, and the mother figures out that they're not
Yes. All
hungry,
the
they're
different
full,
cries.
right? Like
Yeah.
like there's an excitement of you hear me. And the
Yeah.
baby says the same thing.
Yeah.
The dog says the same thing. They're like, I'm here to support you, babe. And I
Oh,
just got to figure out how we're communicating. And then it just expands and expands and expands. And eventually you're talking to your space like I do with feng shui.
oh
Because
my gosh. Well,
everything's in conversation with you and it's magical.
it's magical. Yeah.
And
Oh,
that but
such good stuff.
like returning to that spectrum idea, because I'm very visual. So as soon as I can put a picture or an analogy to something, it kind of sticks. So a lot of the time the universe will talk to me in analogy. But
Mhm.
if we're looking at spectrum, right? The visual spectrum is from a root chakra, a red, right, all the way up to violet crown. And then beyond that, when people say our seven chakras,
Yeah.
well, there's so much more than that. That's just what's like being offered to us from a because we can associate it with the visual spectrum. But
It's
this,
what we've given words to.
yeah, what we can
Yeah.
put words to and
Yeah.
substance to, material, it's a material world, right? From here to here is a material world. But our field is massive. But we can't quite, we want to create this safety and protection between us and them, we want to limit it to this physical, tangible space. But as soon as we um, divert, right, neurodivert from that pathway to say this, what you see is what you get, to
Yeah.
take this like unfiltered path in our logical mind and be open to the idea that it's possible,
Yeah.
it you get flooded. You get flooded. And then sometimes you have to close back up into that materialism.
Yeah.
And and I think that's what science does often, right? Because we want reliable sources. Nobody wants to feel an like an imbecile or foolish. Like foolish is a big one. Prove it to me. But
Yeah.
the power of belief is not needing the proof.
Yeah.
The power of belief, and all scientists have belief, or else they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. But what our society has put measures on is is all of these uh, we don't have the apparatus to measure what is out there.
Yeah.
It's limiting us.
Well, and when they say evidence-based science or an evidence-based modality, it's what it's saying is that this evidence is in someone else's body and we've saw it and see it. So we're going to assume that we can take this evidence and apply it to your body. And that might not be true. Or it might, like your evidence is in your body. Your
Mhm.
evidence is not in a statistic.
Right.
What works for you and how you work is in you coming to understand and be in connection with this uniqueness. It is not with you going, well, that's evidence based. I trust it. I will apply it to my life.
Yeah, like evidence and formula based, because everybody wants to know, well, how do I get that?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's my way is different than your way, and your way is different than another way, but it's all the same thing too, right?
Which is why it's really important to be in curiosity with
Mhm.
your own self so that you
Mhm.
can grow your awareness. But you've said the word compassion a few times, and I think it's huge. Like, if you're gonna undertake this, um, like basically hero's journey of figuring yourself out and finding that beautiful, unique talent and gift and specialness. It could be just the most obvious thing about you. And it's just sitting there. It's not something that you have to go, diamond mining for. It's just there. But you also have to have a lot of compassion and curiosity in order to be able to own it.
Yeah. And I think we're so weighted down sometimes by our faults. And
Yeah.
that's why if you're in community with like-minded people, whether that's the dog park or the spirit seekers, right?
Yeah.
And you can see and love that aspect of yourself in other people, then you're not like we're doing a circle here as we always do. But then the energy isn't wasted in hiding things that you think are say wrong with you or odd, or that you just feel different than others. You can then see and accept that and have compassion for it, to open up to other to the because you can't have a deficit
Yeah.
without having an exception, like an exceptional attribute.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the yin and yang.
Yeah.
It's
Always
important
something to balance it.
to have that balance, that universal balance. Yeah.
I want
I,
to switch gears, but is there anything you want to sort of wrap that up with before I'm going to ask you about how you see spaces.
okay.
I want to disclose to everyone that Jason and I did a reno of this house in 2020, and Wendy was our design consultant. Um, you have like your whole career is in design. And as your neurodivergent gifts have become apparent to you, you've added this lens to your design. And you use the words feng shui, but also it is the way you see spaces and colors and elements that give you this gift. And every single person who opens the front door of my house says, "Oh my God, your house is gorgeous."
Mhm.
So, can you talk to us about that gift?
Yes.
How
It
you see spaces?
how I see spaces. I see. I see spaces in recognizing patterns. So I
Mm.
need to see, like, I was, I had a period, a number of years actually, and I'm actually no longer in that space of resistance for interior design, because interior design for me felt beautiful in the space I was in my 20s, right? Creating an experience for people. And that to me was a powerful thing to do, is to identify, how do you want to feel in this space, and how can I support you in creating that space. But as I grew, and as my intuition, I suppose I was tapping or accepting, maybe, because I think with intuition too, it's not this, it grows, but it does this because it scares the living crap out of you sometimes. So you got to like pull back and lean in, and pull back and lean in. And so I think that was happening throughout my design career, when people would say, I don't know what you did, Wendy, but something changed. And I'm like, I just built the like sofa 3 inches from the wall. So really, what was that? But it felt like it was suffocated there. And so you make these slight adjustments based on how you feel in the space, and what you're picking up from your clients. And then just like, talking to the trees, the space is like, thanks. Yeah, okay, you heard
Great.
me, or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think we've all had that experience where you can walk into a space and something like pops out. It's almost like oracle cards when you pull a card and they say what first identified itself. So that's like the primary language, or the message that's coming through. So when I work through spaces, that's what happens, is things start highlighting, and then it's my job to identify the pattern of where that came from, and how that's reflective in the person's physical and energetic space. So a lot of people want they want a book. They want to
Yeah.
go online and follow oh, you know what? It's the year of the wood snake, and I should be doing this and that. But just like Ayurveda, it's not that cut and dry. It's not that prescriptive. Like everybody that enters that owns a home, the number one energy that they're bringing into their space is themselves. So it's pairing. I started off in psychology, actually. Started off in
Oh,
psychology, and then I diverted to design a couple of years in because I was too sensitive. Anyways. No, but I just knew. I said to myself, this is a side tangent, but I said to myself, I need some life experience here. I need to live my life so that I can authentically come through and help people in a way, in a psychology form. I didn't know how it was gonna take shape. But I said, I'm gonna take this playful route through design and the 3 dimension. And then now I'm bringing in, fifth and sixth dimension. But I
yeah.
knew that it wasn't the right time for me, and now it is. So it's a marriage between this interest in people,
Yeah.
interest in space, and interest in how we intersect and act. Yeah.
I
So
would definitely put myself in the category of, I don't know what you did here, but it just, I mean, 4 years in, Jason and I both, every time we come home and when our kids are home, we're just like, this feels exactly like we want it to. And it's delicious and nourishing and supportive and yeah, everything. And it gets to evolve. It gets to evolve.
it's like anything, it's a dynamic relationship. And sometimes we think it's one-sided, like friendships.
Yeah.
When people say, I give so much in this friendship. No, you know what? Again, the yin and the yang, it's absolutely impossible, let me tell you, for it not to be this dynamic relationship of like you're giving, but what are you receiving?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna quote my cousin's husband, because just the other day and he said, you can't learn a lesson from your parents that they're teaching you. So that just emphasizes that like everything is you're receiving information from your environment, and you are also providing information for your environment and in how this exchange is happening. So as your space changed, you actually changed before it. Like before they call me, I take note of like what date did they call me on, and then like what date am I going to do this design consult or feng shui analysis, because the change already happened. And that's that idea of the thought before the manifestation of the thing, you know?
And that is something you and I are talking about in terms of like the energy shift in the world. If the saying energy flows where attention goes,
Yeah.
that's true. So when you
On my
decide something's
business card.
happening where you're, say that one more time.
It's on my business card.
Right?
Intention goes where energy
Oh, is
flows.
it? How cool. But it's like exactly true. You start thinking, I need to make a change. So you're already doing that. And then when you book with you, and then in the space between when you've made the booking and when the consultation happens, so much already shifts. I
Yeah.
see that with people who book in with me too. It's like something's going on, and they're like, oh, I'm going to book with Jill. And then by the time they come see me, they're like, oh, it's already sort of like passed through, you know?
But yeah, it's not yet. It's just gained momentum because it was a thought and
Yes.
it had a vibrational voice. It's like mudra and mantra, right?
Yeah.
As soon as you pair sound vibration with physical form, it has now doubled. And as soon as you bring you in, right, that is the biggest leap we can ever make. You know, if you think about like prayer,
Yeah.
hundreds of people praying for one person, that's powerful. But if you go from one to two people, that's the biggest jump you're ever going to make in terms of the weight behind the intention. So as soon as you reach out to Jill Novak to say, I need a session here on my constitution, something's off, that doubled the
Right. How
time.
cool. So
It's
is so
so
and I
great.
yeah, and you know me, like when I feel stuck, that's when I book a healing touch session because there's something in me that's sticky. And I'm like, I just maybe I'll book an appointment, be on Wendy's table, and something magic happens. And it does. Because so what you're talking about quantum physics right now.
Yeah, it's entanglement.
Entanglement. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
When
That's
I'm going to start wrapping us up here.
it's hard to
We
do,
need
isn't
to
it?
talk about that is a thread left untied.
Is there a thread left untied?
Is there anything else you feel like we need to drop onto this table right now about neurodivergence, how you see patterns, how people see patterns, and then self-acceptance?
Yeah, no, I think I'm just gonna echo what you said is like there's no harm in being curious. So
Yeah.
if this all sounds a little bit out there, crazy, let it. Like let it, but I think the idea of being a skeptic is most I don't want to say harmful, but I'm saying it's so easy to disprove something rather than be okay with it not being provable and just knowing that it's your inner truth. So
Yeah.
not to question ever if you get a shiver on go driving along the highway, or you walk into a space and something jumps out at you, or you see a person and all of a sudden a memory from your childhood jumps into action. Like, don't discount those stories that we tell ourselves and that our body is trying to communicate with us. Just be curious about the message. And then if and that then amplifies the language that you're creating with the universe around you and the space around you and the people in your field. So yeah, I think if we just stay open, we're golden.
And then the word Ayurveda, when you break it down in Sanskrit, it means the science of life.
Mm.
And it is all about like almost being a scientist to use your life to discover your operating system, your divine design, your engineering, because you know, this is perfect and there's no design flaw here. And so our Ayurveda helps us kind of hack the code and gain understanding into how this unique piece, including our brain, including our neurodiversity,
Yeah,
our physical diversity, our neurodiversity, our spiritual diversity, our breath diversity, like we are unique beings.
yeah. And they're all at play together.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
are. They cannot be separated. It
yeah,
is an illusion that these things are actually layers. They are interdependent, entangled.
yeah, they're all entangled. Yeah. One shifts, the other shift.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. If you are listening to this podcast in real time, meaning that when it first comes out in February of 2025, then know that in March, Wendi will be offering do you want to give it a title?
then I'll be held to it. Yeah. Uh, finding flow.
Finding flow.
Finding flow. So yeah, feng shui is wind and water. And it's recognizing how nature moves in and around us and recognizing those cycles and how we relate to the natural world around us. So I think I'm going to dive into a little bit of just that concept, I suppose, in the elements and how they relate to us on a energetic um, through an energetic lens. So my deepest desire, I think, with feng shui is just teaching the principle of curiosity and to see the patterning around us. So if I was to step away from the world, I want to know that I shared with somebody what it means to use energetic eyes. And there is
Mm.
a way around there is a way to that, to develop that. So yeah, I think that
I'm so excited.
will be just
Okay, so Wendi will be offering that inside the Sister Science community in March. And there'll probably be more details coming out, but if this kind of conversation has piqued your interest, then you can check out Wendi at OpenDoorDesign.ca.
yeah, yeah.
And her design is there. Your healing touch is there as well.
There's a link to the healing touch at the yurt.
Yeah. So, kind of like a hands-on modality with the healing touch and your body, and then your space modality with, yeah, the spaces that you live in. And
Just
you,
a triad, right? I just meet them where they're at.
oh my God, I love it so much. Thank you. I have a few shivers happening, with my own aha moments in this conversation. So I'm just really grateful for it. And thank you for just the way you allow clarity to come over something that sometimes feels complicated. And yeah, we put it in a box and judge it instead of just being curious and open.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you always for, I enjoy our conversations endlessly. And I think that the community that you're creating for these women, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You just talk to anybody who's been in space together, like that's what we need is just that safe container to be seen and heard and grow in vibrational energy. And that this community has shifted my world in a way that I can't even um, yeah, give words to, but just a lot of gratitude. So thank
And
you.
don't you feel like something right now is just like, it's like we're just getting started?
It is big.
It does feel like that. Okay.
Exciting.
We won't make you people listen any longer. Thank you so much for being here and using your time, investing your time and intention in your awareness inside of this conversation with us. So we can almost feel your energy as you're listening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.